The emergency session had been going for 6 hours. Velthar stood at the center of the massive council chamber, his forearms trembling. Around him, representatives from 40 different species argued and shouted. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some were made of crystalline structures that hummed when they spoke. But they all shared one thing: fear. "The Vakran fleet destroyed our colony on Hestros III, announced Commander Grix, his reptilian face showing no emotion. "We lost 12,000 civilians. Our defense fleet was destroyed in 40 minutes. The chamber fell silent. That made 3 worlds lost in 2 months. The war was going badly. No, that was wrong. The war was already lost. Everyone knew it, but nobody wanted to say the words out loud. Taemin sat in the human delegation section and watched carefully. He was a tall man with dark hair starting to gray at the temples. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 2 years ago. Most species still saw humanity as primitive newcomers. They had faster ships and better weapons. What could Earth possibly offer? Bora sat next to him, her fingers moving across a data tablet. She was younger than Taemin, sharp-eyed and direct in her manner. As a military analyst, she had spent months studying the war. The numbers told a clear story. The Galactic Council was dying. "How many ships do we have left?" asked a delegate whose species breathed methane and spoke through a translator device. 40% of our combined fleet, Grix said. His voice was flat. "The Vakran started with fewer ships than us, but they win every battle. Their warriors are stronger. Their weapons are better. Their commanders are smarter." "That's not entirely accurate," Bora said quietly to Taemin. He looked at her with a raised eyebrow. She turned her tablet so he could see the tactical data. Battle after battle showed the same pattern. The council fleets always fought in the same way. They formed neat lines. They fired their weapons at maximum range. They retreated when they took casualties. Every single time, the Vakran had learned to predict these tactics. They adapted. They won. "We should surrender," said a tall being covered in flowing tentacles. "If we ask for terms now, some of us might survive." "Coward," roared a delegate who looked like a walking mass of blue flame. "My people would rather die than submit to the Vakran." The argument exploded again. Velthar raised all 4 arms and the chamber slowly quieted. His homeworld had been one of the first the Vakran conquered. His entire family had died there. "The Vakran will not accept surrender," he said. His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "They want our resources. They want our worlds. They do not care about prisoners or treaties. In 6 months they will reach the core systems. After that, it is over." Taemin stood up. The movement was smooth and deliberate. "Speaker Velthar, I request permission to address the council." Most of the delegates ignored him. A few turned to look with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. Humans were so young. So inexperienced. What could they possibly contribute? "The human wishes to speak," Velthar said. His tone was neither welcoming nor hostile. "Just tired. Very well." Taemin walked to the speaker's platform. He moved with the calm confidence of someone who had spent years in diplomatic negotiations. Bora followed him, carrying her tablet. "Thank you, Speaker," Taemin said. "We have been studying this war. My colleague will present our findings." Bora activated a holographic display. Battle data filled the air above them. "The Council has lost 47 major engagements," she said. "In every case you fought using the same tactical approach. Linear formations. Long-range engagement. Withdrawal when casualties reach 15%. Those are the accepted rules of civilized warfare," Commander Grix said. There was an edge to his voice. "We are not savages." "The Vakran don't care about your rules," Bora replied. She showed footage from a recent battle. "They know exactly what you will do. They position their forces accordingly. You are predictable, and that predictability is killing you." Angry voices rose throughout the chamber. Several delegates stood and shouted. How dare these primitive humans lecture them about warfare? Earth had barely developed faster than light travel. What did they know about galactic conflict? Velthar gestured for silence. When the noise died down, he turned to Taemin. His insectoid features were difficult to read, but his body language showed desperation. "Are you saying you could do better?" "I'm saying we have experience you lack," Taemin replied carefully. "Earth has fought wars for its entire recorded history. We have developed tactics and strategies that might seem unusual to you, but they work. What do you propose?" Velthar asked. "Send military advisors to Earth," Taemin said. Let us study your forces, your capabilities, your enemy. Give us access to your tactical data and battle records. Then we will offer recommendations. And what do you want in return? Asked the methane-breathing delegate. Resources? Technology? Territory? Nothing, Taman said. We are members of this council. Your war is now our war. We help because it is the right thing to do. Commander Grix laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. You offer advice. Not soldiers. Not ships. Just words, and we offer knowledge, Bora said. Knowledge that might save your people. The chamber erupted in debate again. Some delegates saw the human offer as insulting. Others saw it as a pathetic attempt by a minor species to gain importance. But a few, the desperate ones who had already lost their homes, listened with hope. Velthar made his decision. The Council accepts Earth's offer. You will have full access to our military facilities and records. Bring your advisors. We have nothing left to lose. 2 weeks later, a human transport ship arrived at the Council's primary military station. It was a small vessel, unremarkable compared to the massive alien warships surrounding it. But when the airlock opened, Taemin saw something he had been waiting for. Military personnel began disembarking, men and women in simple gray uniforms. They carried equipment and data storage units. At the front walked a man with colonel insignia on his shoulders. He had short black hair and steady eyes that took in everything. Colonel Hyunwoo stopped in front of Velthar and gave a slight bow. Speaker, we are here to help. Velthar looked at the small group of humans, barely 30 individuals. This was supposed to save them? He felt despair settle deeper in his chest. But he had authorized this. He would see it through. Follow me, he said. I will show you how badly we are losing. The humans exchanged glances. Then Hyunwoo smiled. It was not a happy expression. It was the smile of someone who had seen impossible situations before and survived them. Perfect, he said. That's exactly where we work best. The war room was massive. Holographic displays showed star maps covering hundreds of light years. Red markers indicated Vakran-controlled territory. It had grown significantly in just the past month. Blue markers showed council holdings shrinking with each update. Colonel Hyunwoo stood with his hands behind his back, studying the displays. Next to him, Captain Jae-hee made notes on a tablet. She was a compact woman with alert eyes and quick movements. Behind them, Lieutenant Da-eun examined ship specifications while Engineer Sang-ho reviewed weapon systems data. Commander Grix watched them with barely concealed irritation. For 3 days, these humans had done nothing but observe and ask questions. They had toured military installations. They had reviewed battle recordings. They had interviewed survivors. But they had offered no solutions. Well, Grix finally demanded, have you seen enough? Or do you need more time to understand how completely we are failing? Hyunwoo turned to face him. Your tactics are flawed. Excuse me? You fight the same way every time, Jae-hee said, looking up from her notes. You form battle lines. You engage at maximum range. You withdraw when you take moderate casualties. The Vakran have adapted to exploit these patterns. Those are the principles of honorable combat, Grix said. His scales darkened with anger. We do not hide. We do not ambush. We face our enemies directly. And you lose, Hyunwoo said simply. The room went silent. Several alien officers shifted uncomfortably. It was true, but hearing it stated so bluntly was shocking. Da-eun pulled up a battle recording. She was young, barely 25, but her tactical analysis was brilliant. This engagement at Sector 7, you had numerical superiority, better defensive positions, but you lost 30 ships because you refused to adapt. When the Vakran changed their approach, we maintained formation. Integrity, one of the alien officers protested. You maintained formation while they picked you apart, Sang-ho said. He was older than the others with graying hair and steady hands. Your ships are well built. Your weapons are powerful, but you use them predictably. Bora entered the war room with Taemin behind her. She had spent the past days analyzing the Vakran themselves. The Vakran are not actually superior warriors. They're just more flexible. They adapt their tactics to each situation. You don't. Are you suggesting we abandon centuries of military tradition? Grix asked. His voice was cold. I'm suggesting you choose between tradition and survival, Hyunwoo replied. On Earth we have a saying, the species that survives is not the strongest or the smartest. It's the one most adaptable to change. Tell me, Colonel, Grix said, stepping closer. How many wars has Earth won against galactic powers? None, Hyunwoo admitted. We've never fought a galactic war, but we've fought each other for thousands of years. We've developed tactics for every terrain, every situation, every possible scenario. Humanity has been at war with itself for so long that we've learned every brutal lesson there is. He activated another display. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric combat, ambush tactics, feints and misdirection, psychological warfare. These are concepts Earth has refined through necessity. Those are not honorable, an officer said quietly. Honor doesn't matter to dead soldiers, Sang-ho replied. Belthar entered the war room at that moment. He had been listening from the doorway. Continue, Colonel. What do you propose? Hyunwoo gestured to the star map. Stop fighting the way the Vakrin expect. Use terrain to your advantage. Set traps. Attack supply lines instead of just military targets. Make them afraid to move forward because they don't know what's waiting. You want us to fight like criminals, Grix said. I want you to fight like survivors, Hyunwoo shot back. The Vakrin respect strength. Show them that fighting the Council is costly and unpredictable. Make victory expensive. Daeun pulled up ship specifications. Your vessels are designed for direct combat, but they can be modified. Stealth systems, hit-and-run capabilities, better sensors for detecting ambushes. This will take time, Velthar said. Time we don't have. Then we start small, Jae-hee said. Pick your best officers, your most adaptable troops. We train them first. Show them new methods. Let them prove these tactics work. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the station. Officers rushed to their consoles. The displays updated with new data. A Vakrin fleet had entered Council space near the Relon supply depot. 20 Vakrin warships, an officer reported. The depot has 6 defense ships. Everyone knew what would happen. The Council ships would form a defensive line. They would engage at range. They would inflict some damage but ultimately be destroyed. The depot would fall. It was predictable. Inevitable. Let us observe the battle, Hyunwoo said. They watched in real time as the engagement unfolded exactly as predicted. The Council ships took position in a standard defensive formation. The Vakrin fleet approached confidently. Weapons fired. Shields flared. Within minutes, 2 Council ships were critically damaged. Jae-hee pointed to the tactical display. See there? The Vakrin commander left his supply ships poorly defended. A small strike force could have hit them while the battle cruisers were engaged. That would mean dividing our forces, Grix said. Yes, and it would force the Vakrin to make a choice. Protect their supplies or continue the attack. Either way, you gain an advantage. On the display, another Council ship exploded. The remaining 3 began to retreat. The Vakrin fleet moved forward to capture the depot. The pattern repeated like a terrible dance they had performed dozens of times before. There, Daeun said, freezing the recording. The Vakrin ships grouped together to breach the depot shields. One torpedo with proper timing could have damaged multiple vessels. Our ships were retreating, an officer said. One ship could have stayed hidden, Sang-ho replied. Powered down, waiting. The Vakrin wouldn't have detected it. Then strike when they're vulnerable. That's a suicide mission, Grix said. It's a sacrifice with purpose, Hyunwoo corrected. If one ship can take out 4 enemy ships, that's a tactical victory. The math is simple. Velthar watched the humans explain their methods. They spoke of war with a casualness that was almost frightening. For them, combat was not about honor or glory. It was about numbers and outcomes. About doing whatever worked. Can you teach us these methods? Velthar asked. Yes, Hyunwoo said. But you have to accept that war is not pretty. It's not noble. It's about survival. Your soldiers will need to hide, to retreat, to attack from shadows. They will need to abandon everything they think they know about honorable combat. How long will training take? 3 weeks for basic tactical adaptation, Jae-hee said. We'll focus on small unit tactics first. Teach your commanders to think flexibly, to see opportunities instead of just following doctrine. Grix looked at Velthar. This goes against everything we believe. Yes, Velthar said quietly. But Colonel Hyunwoo is right. Honor means nothing if we're extinct. Begin selecting candidates for training. We have no choice but to try. Hyunwoo nodded. We'll start tomorrow. And Commander Grix, you should lead by example. Your troops need to see that their leaders believe in these new methods. Grix's scales darkened again, but he said nothing. He knew the human was correct. They were losing. Tradition had failed them. If they wanted to survive, They would need to become something different, something like humans. The training facility was located on a remote moon. 5,000 soldiers from different council species had been assembled. They represented the best warriors their civilizations could provide. Elite troops with decorated service records, veterans of dozens of battles. Sergeant Insu looked at them and saw problems. They stood too tall, too proud, too rigid in their formations. He was a stocky man with a scarred face and hands that had seen decades of combat. He had trained soldiers on 3 continents back on Earth. This would be his greatest challenge. "Listen up," he shouted. His voice echoed across the training ground. "Everything you know about fighting is wrong. If you want to survive the next 6 months, you will forget your old ways. You will learn how Earth fights. You will adapt or you will die." A tall reptilian soldier stepped forward. His scales were marked with honor badges. "I have fought in 23 battles. I need no lessons from a human." Insu walked up to him slowly. "How many of those battles did you win?" The soldier hesitated. 7. "That's a terrible record," Insu said flatly. "Sit down." The soldier didn't move. Insu sighed and gestured. A young woman appeared from behind a training building. Yana was small and quiet, with sharp eyes and graceful movements. She carried a training rifle. "See that target?" Insu pointed to a marker 300 meters away. "Specialist Yana will hit it 5 times in 5 seconds. Impossible at that range without proper positioning," the reptilian soldier said. Yana dropped to one knee, aimed, and fired. 5 shots, 5 hits. She made it look effortless. Then she moved to a different position behind cover and did it again. The targets never had a chance. "On Earth, we don't stand in lines waiting to be shot," Insu said. "We move, we hide. We strike from unexpected angles. Pride doesn't matter. Only results matter." The soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. This went against everything they had been taught. But they had all lost battles. They had all seen friends die. Maybe it was time to listen. The training began in earnest. Insu divided them into small units, mixing different species together. He taught them to use cover instead of standing in the open, how to move quickly while staying low, how to communicate silently using hand signals. Many struggled with the concepts. A species that could breathe underwater didn't understand why they should hide behind rocks. A crystalline being that could deflect energy weapons didn't see the point of dodging. "Your abilities are advantages," Captain Jahe explained patiently. "But the enemy knows about them too. They've adapted to fight you. Now you need to adapt back. Use your strengths in ways they don't expect." She ran tactical simulations where the soldiers had to respond to unexpected situations. Ambushes, supply line raids. Fighting in urban terrain where formation combat was impossible. The first few simulations were disasters. The troops fell back on their training and got wiped out. But slowly they began to understand. A squad of avian soldiers learned to use their flight for sudden vertical attacks instead of just reconnaissance. The aquatic species discovered they could hide in water systems inside space stations. The crystalline beings found that they could create deadly traps using their light deflection abilities. Ensign Kyren was one of the youngest officers in the training program. He came from a species that valued honor above all else. Watching his fellow soldiers crawl through mud and hide behind cover felt wrong. It felt cowardly. He approached Lieutenant Daun one evening. She was reviewing tactical data in the command center. "Lieutenant, may I ask a question?" "Of course," she said, looking up from her display. "How do humans live with themselves? Fighting without honor, using deception and ambush. Does it not shame you?" Daun was quiet for a moment. "Let me tell you about Earth. We have fought wars for thousands of years. Wars over land, resources, religion, power. We have seen what happens when pride matters more than survival. Cities burn. Children starve. Civilizations fall. We learned that honor is a luxury of peacetime. But surely there must be rules," Kyren said. "Lines we don't cross." "There are," Daun agreed. "We don't target civilians. We don't use certain weapons. We treat prisoners with respect. But on the battlefield itself, we do whatever it takes to win. Because if we lose, everything we love dies with us." "The Vakrin don't follow your Earth rules," Kyren pointed out. "Exactly. That's why you need to learn from us. We fought enemies who had no honor, who used every dirty trick imaginable, and we survived by being smarter and more adaptable." Kyren thought about his homeworld, about his family still living there, about what would happen if the Vakrin reached it. Teach me everything, he said quietly. Week 2 of training focused on coordination. Hyunwoo ran exercises where different units had to work together in complex operations. A ground team would mark targets while a space unit attacked from orbit. Engineering teams would disable enemy systems while combat troops exploited the confusion. Engineer Sang-ho worked with the Council's weapons specialists to modify their equipment. He showed them how to create improvised explosives, how to hack enemy communications, how to turn civilian technology into military assets. You have amazing tools, he told them, but you only use them in standard ways. Think creatively. That cargo container, it's also a bomb. That medical scanner, it can detect enemy troop movements. That mining laser, it can cut through a warship's hull. The most difficult part was teaching them to retreat. Council soldiers had been trained that withdrawal was shameful. Insu had to break that conditioning. Retreating is not the same as running away, he explained. It's a tactical choice. You fall back to draw the enemy into a trap. You disengage to attack from a better position. There's no shame in living to fight another day. He ran a simulation where a unit was outnumbered 3-1, following their old training. They would have formed a defensive position and fought to the death. Instead, Insu taught them to retreat while laying traps, to lead the enemy into ambush zones, to turn apparent defeat into victory. The first time a unit successfully executed the tactic in simulation, the soldiers looked shocked. They had survived against impossible odds by running away. It felt like cheating. But it worked. Yona specialized in training sniper teams. She taught them patience, how to wait for hours for the perfect shot, how to control their breathing and heart rate, how to disappear after taking the shot. One well-placed bullet can change a battle, she told them. You don't need to kill 100 soldiers. Just the commander. Just the right target at the right time. Make every shot count. By the end of week 3, something had changed. The troops moved differently. They thought differently. When presented with a tactical problem, they no longer looked for the honorable solution. They looked for the effective one. Kyron led a practice assault on a fortified position. Instead of a frontal attack, his unit used multiple small teams. They created distractions. They hit from unexpected angles. They withdrew when the enemy adapted and attacked from a new direction. The defenders, following traditional tactics, couldn't respond fast enough. The exercise ended with minimal casualties for the attackers. Following old methods, half the assault force would have died. Kyron stood looking at the results display. He felt strange, proud of the victory but uncomfortable with how it had been achieved. You're learning, Hyunwoo said, appearing beside him. That discomfort means you understand the cost of survival. War is not clean, but losing is worse. An urgent message came through during the final training day. The Vakran were launching a major offensive in the Telos system. It was a critical location. If it fell, the Vakran would have a clear path to the core worlds. Commander Grix arrived at the training facility. He had been skeptical of the human methods but had watched the training closely. Now he looked at the assembled troops. They stood ready, no longer rigid in their formations but alert and flexible. The Vakran expect us to defend Telos using standard tactics, Grix said. We will not give them what they expect. Colonel Hyunwoo will coordinate our defense. All units will follow human tactical doctrine. The soldiers exchanged glances. This was real. No more simulations. They would either prove these new methods worked or die trying. Insu walked among them, checking equipment and giving last-minute advice. Remember what you learned. Trust each other. Adapt to what happens. And most importantly, come back alive. Yona made a final check of the sniper teams. Sang-ho verified that all equipment modifications were complete. Jae-hee reviewed the tactical plan with the unit commanders. Daeun prepared her fighter squadron for unexpected maneuvers. Hyunwoo stood with Taemin and Bo-ra, watching the troops prepare. Think they're ready? Bo-ra asked. No, Hyunwoo said honestly. 3 weeks isn't enough time, but it's what we have. They've learned the basics. The rest comes from experience. And if they fail, Taemin asked, then the Vakran win, and the galaxy learns that old ways die hard. The troops boarded their transport ships. They were heading into battle using tactics that felt alien to them, but they were also heading in with hope. For the first time in this war, they had a plan that might actually work. Kyron sat in his transport checking his weapon one last time. Around him, his mixed species unit did the same. They had trained together, suffered together. Now they would fight together. The Vakran fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 23 warships, each one a symbol of their empire's military might. Commander Rathul stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident and calm. The Talos system would fall like all the others. The Council forces would form their defensive lines. They would fight bravely but predictably. They would lose. Long-range sensors show 12 Council ships in standard defensive formation around the mining colony, his tactical officer reported. They're positioned exactly as doctrine would suggest. Rathul smiled. These Council species never learned. They clung to their traditions even as those traditions destroyed them. All ships advance in attack formation. Target their command vessel first. The Vakran fleet moved forward through the asteroid field that surrounded Telos. The asteroids were large enough to provide cover, but the Council forces never used them that way. They always fought in open space where their precious formations could be maintained. Enemy fleet is responding, the tactical officer said. Then he paused. Sir, they're breaking formation. What? On the display, the 12 Council ships suddenly scattered. They didn't retreat in an organized withdrawal. They simply dispersed in different directions, moving between the asteroids. Pursue them, Rathul ordered. This was unusual but not concerning. Perhaps they were fleeing in panic. Maintain formation and destroy them one by one. The Vakran ships followed, confident in their superiority. They had done this dozens of times. The Council forces were running. Soon they would be cornered and eliminated. Inside one of the asteroids, Hyunwoo watched the tactical display in the hidden command center. The Vakran were doing exactly what he had predicted. They saw the scattered Council ships as prey fleeing in disorder. They didn't recognize the trap. All units hold position, he said calmly. Wait for my signal. Captain Jahe monitored the Vakran fleet's positions. The enemy ships had spread out, each pursuing a different target. Their tight formation was broken. Their coordination was compromised. They're in position. Execute, Hyunwoo said. The Council ships that had appeared to flee suddenly reversed course. At the same time, additional ships that had been powered down inside hollowed asteroids activated their systems. The Vakran found themselves surrounded. Multiple contacts. The Vakran tactical officer shouted. Sir, they were hiding. There are at least 20 ships, not 12. Rathul felt the first touch of concern. Reform defensive positions. All ships pull back to... The Council forces struck before he could finish the order. But they didn't attack like they used to. Instead of targeting the hulls with maximum firepower, they focused on specific systems. Engines, weapons arrays, communication equipment. A Vakran destroyer took hits to its propulsion systems and began spinning out of control. Another ship lost its main guns right as it tried to fire. A third found its communications jammed, unable to coordinate with the fleet. Lieutenant Da-un led her fighter squadron in a maneuver that would have been impossible using traditional tactics. Her ships came from above the asteroid field at high speed, diving down on the Vakran formation's blind spot. They launched torpedoes not at the main warships but at the supply vessels in the rear. Strike the support ships, she transmitted to her squadron. Make them choose between protecting supplies and continuing the attack. The torpedoes found their marks. 2 Vakran supply ships took critical damage. Rathul watched in growing anger as his clean battle dissolved into chaos. The Council forces were everywhere, attacking from unexpected angles, targeting weaknesses instead of meeting strength with strength. They're fighting like pirates, he said. This is not honorable combat. His tactical officer had no response. Honorable or not, it was working. On the mining colony below, Chiron led his ground unit through the evacuation tunnels. The Vakran would send troops to secure the facility. Standard procedure. But Chiron's unit would be waiting. Remember your training, he told his soldiers. They were a mixed group. Reptilian, avian, crystalline, and mammalian species all working together. We don't hold defensive lines. We ambush, retreat, and ambush again. Keep them confused. Make them afraid to advance. The Vakran dropships landed near the main facility entrance. 60 elite soldiers disembarked, weapons ready. They had done this many times before. Secure the facility. Eliminate any resistance. Standard operation. They entered the main corridor and found it empty. Lights flickered. The place seemed abandoned. The Vakran commander ordered his troops forward in a standard sweep formation. Then the walls exploded. Not literally, but close enough. Chiron's unit had hidden charges in the corridor walls. The blast didn't kill many Vakran soldiers, but it disoriented them and destroyed their formation. Council troops appeared from side passages, fired precisely aimed shots, and disappeared before the Vakran could respond. The enemy soldiers fired at shadows. They advanced cautiously, finding nothing. Then another ambush would hit from a different direction. "They're everywhere and nowhere," the Vakran ground commander reported. His troops were taking casualties but rarely saw the enemy. This was psychological warfare, and it was breaking his soldiers' confidence. In space, the battle had turned into a nightmare for Commander Rathul. His ships were more powerful than the Council vessels. In a direct fight, he would win. But there was no direct fight. The enemy refused to engage on his terms. A Council cruiser would appear from behind an asteroid, fire at a critical system, and retreat before his ships could respond. His heavy guns were useless against targets that wouldn't stay still. His superior shields meant nothing when the enemy wasn't trying to destroy his ships but disable them. 4 ships have lost engine capability, his tactical officer reported. 6 more have damaged weapon systems. We're being taken apart piece by piece. Yona watched through her scope from a concealed position on a small asteroid. She had been waiting for 40 minutes, barely moving. Her target was the command deck of the Vakran flagship. 1 shot, that's all she needed. The moment came. Through a brief gap in the ship's defensive fire, she could see the observation windows of the bridge. She controlled her breathing, let her heart rate slow, squeezed the trigger gently. The specialized round crossed the distance in seconds. It punched through the reinforced window and struck a control console near Commander Rathul. The explosion wasn't large, but it was enough. The bridge filled with smoke and alarms. Rathul was wounded by shrapnel. "Medical team to the bridge," someone shouted. The Vakran command structure dissolved into temporary chaos. Yunwoo saw the opportunity immediately. All ships, concentrated assault on the flagship. Disable it before they can recover. 6 Council ships converged on the Vakran flagship. They didn't try to destroy it, just cripple it. Engines took multiple hits. Communication arrays went offline. Within minutes, the most powerful ship in the Vakran fleet was drifting helplessly. Rathul, bleeding from multiple cuts, looked at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was being defeated not through superior firepower, but through tactics he had never encountered. The Council forces fought like nothing he had seen before. They were using methods that seemed crude and dishonorable but were devastatingly effective. "Order a retreat," he said finally. The words tasted like poison. "Sir, we still outnumber them," his second-in-command protested. "I said retreat," Rathul shouted. "They're not fighting to win glory. They're fighting to survive, and we're not prepared for this." The Vakran fleet began to withdraw. Several ships had to be towed because their engines were disabled. They left behind damaged vessels and supplies. The retreat was not organized. It was desperate. On the colony, the Vakran ground troops received the withdrawal order with relief. They had been fighting shadows for hours, losing soldiers without ever controlling the facility. They evacuated quickly, abandoning equipment in their haste. Kyran's unit watched them leave. Not a single Council soldier had been killed. They had fought smart, not hard. It felt strange, but undeniably successful. In the command center, Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. "Damage report?" 3 ships with minor damage, Jae-hee reported. 12 wounded personnel, none critical. The Vakran left 7 disabled ships behind and lost hundreds of troops on the ground. "Tactical victory," Bora confirmed, reviewing the data. The Vakran retreated for the first time in this war. Velthar entered the command center. He had watched the entire battle. His forearms were trembling, but not from fear this time, from hope. "It worked. You actually made it work." "Your soldiers made it work," Hyunwoo corrected. "They adapted. They trusted the training. They fought smart." News of the victory spread across Council space within hours. The Vakran Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, had been defeated. Not destroyed, but forced to retreat. It was the first good news the Council had received in years. On military stations throughout the war zone, soldiers watched the battle recordings with amazement. The tactics were strange, unconventional, but they had worked. Maybe there was hope after all. Commander Grick stood in his office reviewing the battle data. He had opposed the human methods. He had believed they were dishonorable, but the numbers didn't lie. The Council had won a battle against superior forces with minimal casualties. 3 months passed like a storm across the galaxy. The war that had seemed lost became a conflict the Council could actually win. Victory after victory followed the Battle of Telos, not because the Council suddenly gained superior weapons or numbers, but because they learned to fight differently. General Su Jin arrived from Earth with reinforcements and took command of the expanded Human Advisory Force. She was a brilliant strategist who understood both large-scale operations and small-unit tactics. Under her coordination, human advisors spread throughout Council space, teaching their methods to thousands of soldiers. The Vakran Empire struggled to adapt. Their entire military doctrine was built on strength and direct confrontation. Now they faced an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. Supply convoys were ambushed. Communication networks were disrupted. Military installations were sabotaged. The war that had been a steady march of conquest became a grinding struggle. Commander Rathiel had been relieved of command after the Telos defeat. His replacement studied human history obsessively, trying to understand these tactics. What he found disturbed him deeply. Earth had been at war with itself for thousands of years. Humans had developed warfare into a brutal science. Every dirty trick, every psychological weapon, every tactical innovation had been tested in human blood first. "They are a species forged in conflict," he reported to the Vakran High Command. "We cannot defeat them by being stronger. We must learn to think like them." But the Vakran culture valued honor and strength above flexibility. Changing their entire approach to warfare was not something that could be done quickly. Meanwhile, the Council forces grew more confident with each victory. Major Dong Hyun specialized in operations behind enemy lines. He was calm under pressure and capable of impossible missions. He led mixed human-alien teams deep into Vakran territory, gathering intelligence and conducting sabotage operations that crippled the enemy war effort. One particular mission targeted the primary Vakran supply depot in the Helm sector. It was heavily defended with multiple warships and thousands of ground troops. Traditional assault would be suicide, so Dong Hyun didn't assault it traditionally. His team of 12 infiltrated the facility over the course of 2 weeks. They disguised themselves as maintenance workers, merchants, and refugees. They moved in small groups, never drawing attention. They planted explosives in critical locations. They hacked into supply manifests and created chaos in the logistics systems. When they triggered the operation, the depot descended into confusion. Explosions destroyed fuel reserves. Computer systems reported incorrect inventory data. Ships received wrong coordinates. The facility didn't burn down in one dramatic moment. It simply stopped functioning efficiently. And without that depot, 3 Vakran fleets couldn't maintain their offensive operations. Captain Jae-hee coordinated guerrilla operations across 7 star systems. Council forces no longer held static defensive positions. Instead, they used mobile units that struck and retreated constantly. The Vakran couldn't predict where attacks would come from. They couldn't secure territory because there was always another raid, another ambush, another disruption. Lieutenant Daun had become something of a legend among Council pilots. She led strikes that seemed impossible, appearing from nowhere and vanishing before the enemy could respond. Her squadron had destroyed more Vakran ships than entire fleets had managed using old tactics. Engineer Sang Ho worked with Council scientists to develop new weapons optimized for asymmetric warfare. Mines that could be disguised as asteroids, drones that conducted autonomous harassment operations, electronic warfare systems that could disrupt Vakran communications. The technology gap that had favored the Vakran began to close. Chiron had been promoted to commander after his success at Telos. He now led a battalion of mixed-species troops who had fully adopted human tactics. They operated deep in contested space, making it costly for the Vakran to advance. During one operation, his unit was surrounded by superior forces. Following old doctrine, they would have formed a defensive position and fought to the death. Instead, Chiron ordered a tactical retreat through difficult terrain. His troops laid traps as they withdrew. They picked off pursuing enemies from concealed positions. They turned the Vakran's pursuit into a nightmare. When the enemy finally broke off the chase, Chiron's unit had suffered minimal casualties while inflicting heavy losses. He remembered his conversation with Daun about honor and survival. Now he understood. There was honor in protecting his troops, in accomplishing the mission. The method didn't matter as much as the outcome. The turning point came when General Su Jin proposed a coordinated offensive across multiple fronts. The Council had been fighting defensively for so long that the idea of attacking seemed radical. But Su Jin's analysis showed that the Vakran were overextended. They controlled too much territory with forces adapted to the new tactical reality. We hit them simultaneously in 6 locations, she explained to the Council military leadership. They won't be able to reinforce effectively. We use their own territorial gains against them. Commander Grix, who now fully embraced human methods, supported the plan. For years we reacted to Vakrin movements. It's time we made them react to ours. Velthar authorized the offensive. The date was set. Every Council military unit prepared for what would be the largest coordinated operation of the war. Sergeant Insu trained fresh units even as the offensive was being planned. He had seen hundreds of alien soldiers transform from rigid traditionalists into flexible warriors. Each one was a small victory. Each one was proof that survival mattered more than pride. Specialist Yeana commanded sniper teams that would take out key Vakrin commanders during the offensive. Her teams had become experts at silent elimination. The Vakrin had learned to fear positions where visibility was good. One shot could change a battle, and Yeona's shooters never missed. The offensive began at dawn across 6 star systems simultaneously. The Vakrin detected the attacks but couldn't determine which was the main thrust. All 6 seemed equally serious. They divided their forces to respond to each threat. That was exactly what Sujin wanted. Divided forces meant the Vakrin couldn't bring their full strength to bear anywhere. And divided forces meant they were vulnerable to the hit-and-run tactics Council troops had mastered. Donghyun's special operations teams struck deep behind Vakrin lines, destroying supply depots and communication hubs. The Vakrin command structure struggled to coordinate responses when their messages weren't getting through. Daiyun's fighter wing crippled a Vakrin command station that coordinated fleet movements for an entire sector. Without central coordination, the Vakrin ships fell back on standard tactics, and standard tactics no longer worked against Council forces that fought unpredictably. Chiron's battalion captured a Vakrin admiral during a boarding action. The admiral expected execution or torture. Instead, he was treated as a prisoner of war according to human conventions. He was given medical care and proper conditions. The gesture confused him. Humans fought without honor, but treated prisoners with dignity. It made no sense to his warrior culture. Across all 6 battle zones, the pattern repeated. The Council forces advanced using flexible tactics. The Vakrin tried to respond, but their rigid command structure and traditional methods couldn't adapt fast enough. Battles that should have taken weeks were decided in days. The Vakrin High Command watched their empire's military power crumble with growing alarm. They had conquered 12 star systems with ease. Now they were losing territory to forces they had previously dominated. The difference was one species: humanity, and the methods they taught. After 2 weeks of defeats, the Vakrin did something unprecedented in their history. They requested negotiations, not a temporary ceasefire to regroup. Actual peace talks. The request shocked the galaxy. The Vakrin Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, was asking for peace. The species that valued strength above all else was admitting they couldn't win. Taemin and Velthar traveled to neutral space to meet with Vakrin representatives. The negotiations were tense. The Vakrin wanted to maintain their conquered territories. The Council demanded full withdrawal and reparations. "You have fought dishonorably," the lead Vakrin negotiator said, "using deception and ambush, striking at civilians and supplies. We have fought to survive," Velthar replied. "Your empire brought war to our homes. You destroyed our worlds. We did what was necessary to stop you. The humans taught you their savage ways," Taemin spoke calmly. "We taught survival. Every tactic we showed the Council is one humans learned from fighting each other. We know war intimately because we've practiced it for millennia. You valued strength. We value adaptability. In the end, that made the difference." The negotiations took 3 days. The final agreement required the Vakrin to withdraw from all conquered territories. They would pay reparations to the species they had harmed. In exchange, the Council would not pursue the war into Vakrin home space. The killing would end. The Vakrin negotiator looked at Taemin during the signing. "We underestimated you. All of you. We thought ourselves superior. We were wrong. Recognizing that mistake means you can learn from it," Taemin said. "Perhaps in time we can build something better than war."